Good morning. I'm Tony Coelho. It's an exciting day. Thank you. It's an exciting day for those of us in the disability community to have our march, and I will see you there, and to have the President greet us, someone who really understands what we in the disability community are all about. So we're very honored to be here this morning. I have the privilege of introducing Kate Miles, who has a very interesting story to tell us about her son. Kate?
I'd like to share with you a story, our story of the past 7 years, but first I'd like to introduce my husband, Tom Miles, who's a sheet metal mechanic, my daughter, Kimberly, who is 11 years old, and my son, Robert, who is 9. 7 years ago, when Robert was 2.5 years old, he started having epileptic seizures, and at times over the years, he's had in excess of 200 multiple types of seizures per day. Robert has been on every anticonvulsant medicine on the market. All have been unsuccessful at controlling his seizures. Due to the effect of the seizures on the brain, Robert is mentally retarded and at times unable to walk or talk. He suffers from the most significant form of epilepsy called Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. At the time Robert first became ill, Tom was a first-year apprentice with the Sheet Metal Workers Union. Our insurance coverage was 80%, with the 20% to be paid by the member. This coverage, we were soon to discover, is adequate if you are not suffering from a chronic illness. During the first 3 months of Robert's illness, we were unable to keep him out of the hospital for more than 2 weeks at a time. During that period, we accrued several tens of thousands of dollars worth of medical bills. As we were a struggling young two-income family making $20,000 per year, we applied for assistance, only to be denied because we were just over the maximum income allowed. So we were turned over to some very unfriendly people at the medical collection agency. To make matters worse, after 6 months, the insurance company stopped paying for an RN to come into the house and take care of Rob, so I was forced to quit working. It was at that time it became impossible for us to pay our mortgage, and foreclosure proceedings were started. Fortunately, we sold the house in time and took all of the equity to pay off the medical bills. We then had to find a place we could afford now that we were a one-income family, so we moved to the Eastern Shore. The move required Tom to spend 4 hours on the road each day going to and from work. Robert's pre-existing condition made him uninsurable because he now had a pre-existing condition, and we became all too aware of how important it was for Tom to keep his job. We knew that if he lost his job or if his grades in the apprenticeship program were not passing, Robbie would lose all of his insurance coverage. After the move, more admissions followed, and again the bills started mounting. It was at that time we were told to apply for children's medical services. Finally, we were accepted for something. They agreed to pay the balance remaining on all bills after the union had paid, on services pertaining only to epilepsy. If it were not for this organization, we would have been homeless. Like many programs of this type, Children's Medical Services requires yearly renewal. And in September of 1992, we moved to a new home, one that was wheelchair accessible. The very next month, our renewal came due, and we were denied services based on our income being in excess of the $22,000 per year maximum. Tom could make 10 times that amount, and it would not be enough. The 80% that the union has paid out over the past 7 years has exceeded our total income for that same period. Children's Medical Services only pays on epilepsy-related services. They are not Robert's only problem. Robert has chronic ear infections, upper respiratory infections, and pneumonia, all requiring several trips to the pediatrician's office per month. The wheelchair that he's sitting in cost $3,000 2 years ago, and he's almost outgrown it already. He requires physical and occupational therapy, weekly lab work, as well as his medicines that run approximately $150 every 10 days. As if we don't have enough to worry about, we've recently been informed that Robert has used up $160,000 of his $250,000 of major medical in just 7 short years. Due to the weak economy, last year Tom's company was forced to cut back to a 4-day work week, while at the same time the union eliminated many of the medical benefits that reduced the coverage to 50-50. Due to Robert's pre-existing condition, Tom is locked into his job, even if his employer cuts him back to a 3-day work week. The problems are never ending. 2 years ago, while lifting Rob, I hurt my back. The injury has left me bedridden and unable to care for Robert many times since. It was at one of these times I contacted our local agency to get some help taking care of Rob in our home. I was told that if he was on medical assistance, they could send an aide to our home, but because he was ineligible, all they could offer was to institutionalize him. I informed them that I would not even consider putting Rob in an institution and that he would not thrive without the love of his family, nor would we. In an institution, no one is going to get up with him during the night while he's having his seizures and let him know that it's okay and that mommy loves him. No one in an institution could ever give him the love that the 3 of us give him. So that spring, Kimberly, who was then 8.5, spent her spring break in the house taking care of her mother and brother, while Tom had to work 2 jobs to keep a roof over our heads. This is why we so desperately need health care reform. What has happened to us and many other families like ours is wrong, but we can stop this from happening to any more families by passing the President's health care reform bill. With the long-term care that it is in the President's bill, institutionalizing Robert is something we won't ever have to consider. Even if it's phased in over the next 6 years, at least we will know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And lastly, I'd like to thank President Clinton and Mrs. Clinton on behalf of our family for even taking on this enormous task. We've been fighting the system now for 7 years, and up until now, there's been no help or even recognition of this terrible burden on our family. We've fallen through the cracks too many times, and I want to thank you for fighting on our behalf. Now I'd like to introduce a man who you all know well, who was the chair on the President's Committee on Employment of People with Disabilities, Mr. Justin Dart.
Mr. President, Tony, Kate, colleagues, I have never been as proud to be an American as I am today. Here we are, the representatives of our nation's poorest, most isolated and oppressed people, doing the business of democracy with the President of the United States. Mr. Jefferson is smiling. Martin Luther King and Wade Blank are smiling. For decades, America's exclusionary, poverty-based health care system has been the major barrier to the quality, to the equality, and the prosperity of people with disabilities. Bill Clinton has said, we can solve this problem if we have the courage to change. Colleagues, I have never been in a room with so much courage. The courage of the people of the deaf who have gone to jail for our rights. courage of the people of Nickel, Dredif, and CCD, who have made the lonesome sacrifices and fought the lonesome battles to emancipate tens of millions of people with disabilities from an eternity of dependency and discrimination. And the courage of our president. At long last, we have a president with the courage to lay his political life on the line for universal health care that begins to meet the needs of people with disabilities. Now, there is massive opposition, history's most expensive campaign of deception. Bill Clinton has our support, but we've got to do more. We and thousands more have got to deliver the truth to every congressional office, today, tomorrow, and every day, until the truth prevails. Mr. Congressman, Ms. Congresswoman, health care is a human right. 49 million Americans with disabilities respectfully demand that you accept the President's challenge to guarantee comprehensive, affordable health care to every single American now. Universal coverage, now. Long-term care, including a national system of community-based attendance services, now. Consumer-driven psychiatric services, durable medical equipment, assistive technology, and prescription drugs, now. Mr. Congressman, we are willing to die for our country, but not for our insurance companies. No more excuses, no more exclusions, no more profiteering, no more Band-Aid solutions. Real health care for all Americans, now. Mr. President, we appreciate you. You have significantly expanded our participation in government. You have begun real action on your pledge to implement the Americans with Disabilities Act. You are leading the good fight for health care. Mr. President, we know what you're up against. The vicious political and personal attacks. You are providing a real profile in courage. We respect you. We love you. We are with you. Mr. President, we the people may have lost a few battles in the war for real health care, but our community has just begun to fight, and we're not going to stop until the job of justice is done. Mr. President, We need your continuing leadership for the principles of universal health care, personal assistance services, and simple justice. Together, Mr. President, with your leadership, we will free our people. We shall overcome. Mr. President, now two authentic American patriots, Stephanie Thomas and Denise Figueroa, are going to present to you a leather book bearing the signatures of all who will participate in the Bridge to Freedom celebration at the Lincoln Memorial today. Please hear the message of our hearts.
You're all on record here, though. Most people don't want their names on. Well, thank you, Stephanie and Denise, and thank you all for being here. I want to thank ADAPT, the National Council for Independent Living, the Consortium of Citizens with Disabilities. Recognize my good friend Tony Coelho, Marco Bristow, the chair of the National Council on Disabilities, pending confirmation. I'm honored to be given this book of signatures of genuine American heroes who are fighting every day for their own rights and for genuine health care reform for all Americans. I want to say a special word of thanks to Justin Dart, who has risen above partisanship to provide an example for all of us about what it really means to keep fighting the good fight, not only for Americans with disabilities. This is a fight for all Americans who are touched by these problems. And I want to say a special word of thanks to Kate Miles and her family for being here today, for her determination, her courage, her love, and for her ability to get up here and tell their very moving personal story. I say this to make a special point. The issues affecting Americans with disability, they say, well, there are 49 million Americans with disability, and there are some sort of disabilities, and there are 255 million of us total. But if you consider all the family members of all the Americans with disabilities, you're getting very close to a majority of us who would be affected in a positive way by the provisions of the Health Security Act that help Americans with disabilities, just those provisions. And in a very moving and human way, Kate Miles and Robert and their children, the husbands, all the families they stand for all across America, they have reminded us of what this is all about. The theme of your rally today is Bridge to Freedom. And I want to talk a little about that. The Americans with Disability Law was a bridge to freedom. But it's only part of the equation. It's only part of the equation. What about economic freedom? How many Americans with disabilities are denied the chance to do work they are able to do, not because of discrimination per se, but because of the way the healthcare system works. This is not just a healthcare issue, it's a work issue. How much better off would the rest of us be if every American with a disability who was willing to work could work because of changes in the healthcare system? It's self-defeating to say to the Americans with disabilities, you can have health benefits, but only if you spend yourself into poverty, and above all, you must not work. $49 million Americans with disabilities, 24 million with severe disabilities, half with no private health insurance. The healthcare system is failing Americans with disabilities, but in so doing, is failing us all. Is making us less productive than we would otherwise be, less strong than we would otherwise be. It is costing more tax dollars and robbing us of taxes that would come to Americans' treasury, not from higher tax rates, but from more Americans working and paying taxes in the ordinary course of their lives. We had better fix it now. After all of the incredible debates, after all of the amazing ads where, and Justin just referred to one of them, you know, people, these ads where they say somebody calls up and says, well, we'll have to call the government and see if you can get your doctor, all these incredibly bogus ads. We had better do this now. We had better do this now. Otherwise, the forces of disinformation, organized disinformation, will think that the American people actually prefer to have the most expensive, wasteful, bureaucratically cumbersome healthcare insurance financing system on the entire face of the earth, that they prefer that as opposed to giving a decent break to this fine family and to all of you. I don't believe the American people prefer that, and we had better make sure that no one draws that historic lesson from this health care debate. You know, there's a lot of talk today about the whole term empowerment. It risks becoming a buzzword. There's an empowerment television network. And, but frankly, I like it. It captures something that is uniquely American. The idea that people ought to be able to live up to the fullest of their God-given abilities, and that the government should facilitate people fulfilling themselves, not just be a paternalistic government doing things for people. I have believed in that for years. Long before I ever became president, I worked on things that I thought would promote empowerment, more choices for parents and children in education, tax breaks for lower income working people. Some of the things that we've also promoted here in Washington. The Family and Medical Leave Act here in my presidency was an empowerment bill. It enables people to be good parents and good workers at the same time. The empowerment zone concept that we passed through the economic program last time. Lower student loans, lower interest rates for student loans, and better paybacks is an empowerment notion. National service is an empowerment notion. Let people have the strength at the grassroots level to solve their own problems. Empowerment involves work and family and self-fulfillment in a responsible way. How can we empower the American people when 81 million of us live in families with pre-existing conditions? When the average American in the normal course of an economic lifetime now will change jobs 8 times, when this fine man cannot change a job even if he gets a better job offer because he can't insure his child. Is that empowerment? No, it is the very reverse. So when we try to fix it, what do our adversaries say? They're trying to have the government take over the healthcare system. False. Private insurance, private providers, empowerment for this man, this woman, these children, their family, and their future. Can you stay around here till this is over? You're great. Now, they say, let's not kid ourselves. If this were easy, it would have been done already, right? People have been trying to do it for 60 years. What is the nub of this? The nub is the question of how to cover everybody. And then how to give small businesses the same market power in buying insurance that big business and government have. Because all across America, government and big business are downsizing, and small businesses are growing. I might say that means we better fix this now, because 10 years from now, you'll have a smaller percentage of people working for government and big business and a larger percentage of people working for small business. And if we do not fix this now, this is going to get worse, not better. We already have about 100,000 Americans a month losing their insurance permanently. In the future, if we're going to be caught up in the kind of a world that I want, where we have open borders and we trade and we have these churning, fascinating, ever-changing economies, we better fix it now, because people will change jobs more often, not less often. This is a profoundly important issue, but we cannot do it unless we find a way for everyone to have access and actually be covered by insurance. 9 out of 10 Americans who have private insurance today have it at work. 8 out of 10 Americans who don't have insurance, like this fine young man here, are in families where there is at least one working person. Therefore, it makes logical sense to say that people who do work should be covered through work with a combination of responsibility, just as this family has, from employers and the employee. And then people who are not working should be covered from a public fund. That is our plan. Hardly a government takeover of health care. And it makes sense for the government to empower small business to be able to afford this by providing the opportunity to be in buyers' co-ops, so that small businesses, self-employed people, and farmers can buy insurance on the same term big business and government can, and thereby can afford to hire persons with disabilities, because they will be insured in big pools, so that if there is one big bill for this young man here, the insurer does not go broke. And furthermore, it makes sense to give small businesses a discount, because a lot of them have financial burdens and lower profit margins, and so we do that. That is the role of the government in this. Require people who don't provide insurance for their employees to do it in partnership with their employees. Let small businesses go into big buyers co-ops so they can buy insurance on the same terms that the president and the Congress can, and people who work for big companies can. Eliminate discrimination so that people can move from job to job by removing the problems of pre-existing conditions. And finally, face the fact that if you look at the aging population and the disabled population, we must do something to support long-term care that is community-based and home-based. Now, that is, this is empowerment. This plan helps a person with a disability to be able to take a job by including a tax credit for personal assistance services worth 50% of what he or she earns. That's empowerment. But home and community-based long-term care is also empowerment. And it also, over the long run, will be less expensive. Does it cost more in the short run? Yes, it costs some extra money. But if you look at the population trends in this country, if you look at the people with disabilities who are surviving and having lives that are meaningful, if you look at the fastest growing group of Americans being people over 65, and within that group the fastest growing being people over 80, this is something we have to face as a people. We will either do it now in a rational way, or we will be dragged kicking and screaming into it, piecemeal, Band-Aid-like, over the next 10 years. But make no mistake about it, we cannot run away from this, because we cannot afford either to have everybody in the world forced into a nursing home or living in abject neglect. We can't do one of the two things. So I say to you, all of you know that there is no perfect solution, no easy solution. All of you know that our bill, in order to pay for it, phases some of these services in. But it recognizes the reality of who we are as a people and what we need. We need the work of every American who can work. We need to respect the dignity of every American, and we need to provide the opportunity for every American to live up to his or her capacity in the least restrictive environment that that person might choose. We need to secure for the American economy the services of every person who wishes to be and is capable of being a successful worker. We need to stop seeing government health care expenditures go up 2 and 3 times the rate of inflation every year to pay more for the same health care. We need to stop spending more money on paperwork and administrative costs because of the health care financing system in this country than any other country in the world. We can do all of that and keep the doctors, the nurses, the health care system we have. That's why there are so many thousands and thousands, indeed millions now, of nurses, health care providers, and physicians who have supported our cause. And so I ask you, the real problem with this, I am convinced, is that there is no way to use the political vernacular, to kiss it, to keep it simple, stupid. That's what people always tell me, you know? The real problem here is that we bear the burden of every move, those of us who want change, because we live in a system that is complicated, so it is not simple to fix it. So I plead with you, a lot of you will contact members of Congress who voted for the Americans with Disabilities Act who are not yet prepared to vote to make sure every American has health insurance, and who do not understand yet that you cannot eliminate pre-existing conditions, and you cannot eliminate other discriminatory practices, and you cannot afford to begin to provide long-term care that is community-based and home-based unless you set up a system where everybody has health care insurance, where small businesses can buy it on the same terms big business and government can, and where insurers insure in big enough pools so that nobody goes broke when they do insure a family where a member has a disability, and where small businesses get a discount. Those are the things we try to do with the power of government. It is a legitimate thing to do, but when you strip it all away, what we're really trying to do is to empower the families of this country to live in dignity, to work in dignity, and to fulfill themselves. And in a strange way, this is a battle that the disability community, known so well to the member of Congress, being so successful in the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act, this is a battle that you may be able to lead for the rest of America. That they do not understand. So I ask you to do that. Be an agent of change, an agent of empowerment. Never forget that you are carrying on your shoulders now not only your own cause, but ours as well. We cannot, in the end, fully unleash the forces of all human Americans until we do this. And we cannot do this with all the resistance and all the organized opposition, with the sheer intellectual difficulty of the task, unless people like you can break through. You can break through to those members of Congress. You can do it. You can do it. And we need you. All the rest of America, we need you to do it. Good luck, and God bless you.